listen, my life's basically been a roller coaster. I went from, being a nerdy 7 or 8 year old, reading, writing, just wanting to write books for, for that was what I wanted to do, to getting caught up in the world and falling victim to my circumstances of being, from a single parent household, from immigrants and low income, to getting caught up in crime, going to prison, getting stabbed, so many different things, going through and going through depression, which was one of the biggest things, right, for me, to completely turning my life around, thankfully in my early 20s, completely, distancing myself from any form of criminal activity, and just stepping into entrepreneurship. And now, it's been 7 or so years of working for myself, being self-employed, and especially in the last, 3-4 years, I've been able to break 6 figures, 7 figures, multi 6 figures with my businesses. We're on the way to 7 figures, traveling, I'm engaged. Like, I've been able to completely change my life around. And one of the key important things for that is learning and understanding money. People say money is the root of all evil. I have another saying. I say poverty is the root of all evil. All right. And that's where most struggle and pain and different issues come from, right? When you have poverty. And one of the biggest reasons for that, and that continued poverty and nothing changing, is because in school, they're not teaching us, and they're not teaching the young people how to, understand money, what to do with money, how money actually works. And I was actually mentoring at a school about a couple of months ago, and I was on my last session, and I did a presentation. It was just a whole rounded presentation on just things I've learned, because for these young men, young boys, right? Those 15 to 16. And when I mentioned money, I saw their eyes light up, and they had so much questions. And I realized that the whole presentation should have been about that. But that's what this video is for. This video is going to be the most useful video on the internet. Make sure you save it. Make sure you comment below, subscribe. If this video gets enough traction and there's a need for it and I can see the benefit, I am going to make a free course for young people on financial literacy. Okay, I probably will anyway, but let's go without further ado. All right, this is going to be big. So there's going to be 10 tips, and we're going to start with the most important one. The most important thing you must know, young man or young woman, is that the world is abundant. Okay. Growing up, like I said, my parents came from Nigeria, right? And they were struggling to even just get visas, to just actually have a stay, to be allowed in the country. And because of that, there's times probably you can't really work. And then, like I said, I come from a single parent household, so that's only one income. And it's not necessarily because, their qualifications from that country don't typically, correlate over here. They're not really accepted, so then you can't get certain levels of jobs and so on and so forth, right? So I say that to say that growing up, I was kind of conditioned in a way that things was hard, money was tight, and that was that. And that was basically the worst thing you can do and grow up in, because it just gives you this mentality, and it's called a scarcity mentality. Scarcity mentality is where you just believe that the world is scarce. It's like there's not an overflow of wealth. There's not enough to go around. Things are tight. Things are hard, and that's how it's always going to be. Versus an abundant mentality where you believe there's an overflow. There's a lot of wealth to be shared. There's so much money to be made. Like, I can achieve anything, so on and so forth. You have to understand that the world is abundant. As I grew up, even when I turned my life around, I still struggled so hard to progress in life, and I realized it was because I had this subconscious scarce mentality, meaning that the scarcity mentality was living deep in my brain, and it was affecting my decisions. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you got boy A, you got boy B, and this is actually a true story, right? And they both wake up from out of bed one morning, okay? And boy A has a scarcity mentality, and B has an abundant mentality. So boy A wakes up and just says, you know what? Life's hard. I'm gonna roll up a fat joint because he smokes weed, right? And I'm just gonna, live life, right? Like, because that's all I can do. There's not much, and I'm gonna relax. And that's literally the thoughts that he wakes up with. Boy B He may only have had this scarce mentality, this abundant mentality for a day, but he maybe he's watched something on YouTube, maybe he's listened to something, maybe he's gotten around some good people, and they've got him thinking in this way of abundance, and he thinks, you know what, there's money to be made. So he goes out, he wakes up, he gets out of bed, he walks around, you get some energy, and then he picks up his phone. All right, and then what he does with his phone is he starts calling people. He starts calling, and you know what he does? Just say, hey, how you going, man? What are you doing today? Look, what's going on? What should do this? And then you know what happens? An opportunity pops up, right? Someone who's speaking to says, you know what, I'm going to go do this thing, or I'm going to go have this meeting or this business deal, and I actually need somebody, like, will you come with me? And he does come with you and with him. And then you know what? At the end of that, he makes £1,000 in a day. The first time he's ever done that. And he does that at the age of 17 years old. And that's actually a true story because I did it myself. So listen, this story and this sort of concept has proved even more true as I've grown older. Like it's even more true. It's like, it's literally the secret of life. You understand? And it's one of the reasons I travel so frequently. Like, I try to make sure I travel every single quarter. I just got back from Jamaica. I'm already thinking of the next thing, right? And I try to really go out and travel, because there's something about the UK especially that most people will live in a scarcity mentality. And if you go to a third world country, like I said, I'm from Nigeria. I went there last November. It is night and day that this is a first world country and there are a lot of third world and second world countries all over the world, right? And if you're living in a first world country, you are privileged. You have opportunity. It's all about the mindset. And I know you may be beaten up. You might have gone through some hard times. You might be, be a lot less fortunate. You might have really been dealt a bad hand in a lot of different areas, but you still have so much more opportunity than so many other people, right? So that's the rule number one. Number two is a powerful one. It's called Assets versus Liabilities. There's a famous book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he talks about this a lot, all right? Assets versus liabilities. So what are assets? Assets are things that make you money. And I need to just say, first and foremost, this is not financial advice. I'm not giving anyone, I'm not trying to advise. I have to be clear on that. This is just me talking about my own experiences, right? So you need to do, if you're going to invest or do anything to do with finances, you still need to do your own research or see a professional, right? But this is this is good knowledge from myself, right? Of just myself. So assets is things that make you money. Liabilities are things that cost you money. Yeah, whole book about it, but this is literally the premise of what it's about. Assets and liabilities. And in life, you need to stock up on your assets. Okay, don't just stock up on liabilities. So the common use case and example is a house. Is a house an asset or liability? Now, most people will tell you that it's an asset because it's like, oh, this house is going to make money and it's going to make money in a year and 2 years and 3 years. And well, that's speculation. It probably will, but that's still speculation. That's a guess. You don't know for sure. And is it making you money right now? It's not making you money right now unless you get a house, right? And you rent out these rooms. Let's say you get a 3-bed house, right? 3-bed house, it's not the greatest house, but you get a 3-bed house and you rent out the rooms. Maybe you even stay in one of the room. That's one, you in one room, and then 2 rooms get rented out. And actually, this guy, John, is paying for the rent of the house or the mortgage, right? So he's actually covering the cost of what the whole house costs, right? And then this guy, Tom, is basically just extra, but whatever he pays is extra on top. It's just like profit for you. So let's say he pays £1,000, right? So that's £1,000 that goes into your pocket. So essentially, it's making you money. This is when a house becomes an asset. A house becomes a liability when you're not making no money. You're just living in the house by yourself, paying for gas, paying for electric, paying for water, paying for all of these things, and that's it. The house is not bringing you any money whatsoever, right? So that's assets versus liabilities. Obviously, a house is the most obvious one, and a lot of people argue that case because it's like, where you're gonna live, it's better to rent, to buy than to rent, blah, blah, blah. We're not really arguing that. The main point is the overview of in life, you need to stack up your assets versus your liabilities, right? So for example, let's use another example, right? Let's remind, costs us money. Let's look at cars, okay? for most people, cars are a liability. So if you're a young person, although you're in a rush to say, you know what, I want to get that BMW, I want to get that, Range Rover, I want to get whatever, it's the best thing in the world, you have to understand that a car, for most people, is going to be a liability, right? You're going to have petrol, you're going to have insurance, you're going to have road tax, right? You're going to have tolls and all this shit. You're probably going to have fines when you first start driving. That's just it's the way of the world. But it's going to cost you money, right? And the name of the game is to basically stack your money and become financially free, right? That's the name of the game. When you're financially free, you have less stress. You can think more abundant. It's easier to think more abundantly because, as I spoke about before, it's all about getting into an abundance mind state. But it's very easy to just say that or to want that, right? But you need to start to get more money, become more financially free to really step into that abundance mentality, right? So you want to do that. And things that are big liabilities that are just taking money from you are pulling you further away from that, okay? So with the whole assets versus liability talk, right? We're not here to say you shouldn't have some sort of liabilities. Life is life, right? And, one of the biggest quotes that you're going to kind of come across in life and think about is YOLO, you only live once. And this is one of the, can be one of the hindrances of you actually being successful and having money and being abundant, right? Because when you think YOLO, it justifies everything. Well, you know what? You only live once. I might as well spend this. I might as well get this car. But you could do that all day long. You need to have a balance, right? It's all about balance. That's what I say. It's all about balance, okay? So you will have some liabilities, but you need to look at your life like a score sheet, right? And you look at it like this. You got plus in your mind and you got minus, okay? Kind of like with the batteries. So plus is what's coming in, income. And minus is what's going out. That's outcome, okay? And you need to balance this so that ideally you've got more coming in than what's coming out. That's the name of the game. If you can do that and you can do that long enough and you can make that income far greater and you can keep that higher, much, much higher than the outcome, then you will live an abundant life. You will have money, you will stack money and you'll be laughing, all right? So it's not about completely restricting yourself, not enjoying anything. No, that would be a lie. I'll be a lie if I said I don't have liabilities. But you want to try and really keep these down and keep these very high, right? Assets, okay? Cool. What are assets? Assets could be things that make you money over a long period of time. So like the house, though we make that argument, it is partly an asset. You can have things like gold or investment stocks, or you can actually have things like the car, which you could turn into an asset by if you do Uber. So now the car makes you money, right? That's an example. All right, let's move on to number 3. This is super important, right? Luxury items are the devil. They're evil. All right. Now, some people are going to be like, what are you actually saying, Michael? What are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm talking typically to people from working class backgrounds. I'm talking typically to young people and people who do not have, just a silver spoon or have a lifeline or have someone older than them who's already done the hard work. I'm talking to people, you're starting from scratch, right? For those type of people, for us, these type of people, this is true. And I don't care what you want to say or whatever, right? When you achieve financial freedom, you start making a lot of money and these luxury items start to become quite cheap for you and not a lot of money, then literally you can literally cross out this, right? You can cross out the devil part and they're fine. They're absolutely cool. But until that day, they are a myth, right? I went into school and I remember when I started at that school, there was this obsession with it wasn't a big obsession, but anytime we would ask them a question about brands or companies, they would bring up stuff like Montclair and this and that. And I saw some of the kids wearing Montclair and it reminded me that I used to be that person. There was a time, right? But listen, let me tell you something. It just boils down to the past point that I made, okay? It's all about assets versus liabilities, and it's all about seeing your money go up, right? And your income go up rather than your outgoings. As you start off, the younger you are, let's say, before the age of 25, the most 25-year-olds and under are really going to be making is anything from nothing, right, a year to, let's say, a couple of thousands a year if you're not working, maybe you're just getting money here and there, to, I would say, a maximum of like 30,000 a year. Okay. And that's like, this is like the prime. This is like you did everything right and you came out, and even, you know, really and truly, even if you let's say you done uni, you got a good job or whatever you may be, you know, with the job aspect of it, you're probably gonna, you know, even if you're making 30K on paper, you have to understand about taxes, which we'll talk about in a second. So your 30K, you're probably making more like 22 or whatever, right? Thousand. Now, the exception would be someone who started a business, you took really great advice, you're doing whatever, you could be making 50K plus or whatever, right? But even still, generally, especially, and we're talking about like 18, 19, 16-year-olds, you're not making a lot of money. So if your aim of the game is to stack money, make money, become financial free, help your mom, buy a house, do all of these things, these luxury items are really chipping at your money, right? And they're chipping away at your dreams, at your life, at your, all of these things, right? It's a trap. I don't know how to really hone in on it, but it is a trap. It's the biggest trap in the world. And I made a point of going to that school, and I don't do it anyway, but not wearing any type of designers. And I could wear like a little something, like I do wear maybe like Armani every now and again, or Hugo Boss or whatever, but I made a point to not wear designers, because I need you to understand that it's a trap, and life is about experiences. All right, experiences are the real luxury. That is the true thing. I would rather you spend money, spend £1,000 going to Thailand for 2 months when you're like 16 or 17 or whatever, you know, in college, or not, maybe not 2 months, I don't know if you're allowed, but going there for a couple of weeks, having a full-on holiday, experiencing life, and really completely changing your mind by seeing another part of the world, rather than you spending £1,000 on a flipping coat or a flipping whatever. And this for you is probably going to be hard-earned money, and I know this from experience, right? I made that first £1,000 and I probably spent 600 of it on designer clothes. Can you imagine that as a 17-year-old? And it's so sick, like, you know, I have no one but myself to blame, because I later saw people and peers use that £1,000 that they got, or however much they got, to start clothing brands or start this. And I was always entrepreneurial, but it's just the choices I made with my money. And I've seen people take that money, take that sort of money, and build businesses worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions today, right? So luxury items are the devil. Don't be out here, you literally look like a fool, you know what I mean? You literally look like a fool, having no money in your account, or having very little money in your account, and you're wearing these things and competing with people. And look, do successful people wear luxury design? There's this argument of the most successful people don't wear it, Mark Zuckerberg and blah, blah, blah. It's BS, all right? You know, you go to Bond Street, you go to somewhere in London, some high street, some posh place in US, wherever, you're going to see successful people buying the Gucci's, buying the Louis Vuitton, buying jewelry, buying flipping expensive rings for their partners, all of these things, right? So they do go for the luxury, but you have to understand, they're playing a different game than you. If you have millions sitting in your account, these things are cheap, right? It's a different type of game. You're literally, and people, and this is what I say about the world is abundant, and a lot of kids and people don't realize that how abundant it is, that you could literally be living a few rows away from a bunch of millionaires, right? You could be passing in the street and the person you don't even realize is a millionaire. You could go to your local Turkish shop or kebab shop and the person is a flipping millionaire. The owner of this thing is a millionaire. The person, someone even working in that pops in every now, could be a millionaire. So just because you see these people wearing certain things or doing certain things, it doesn't, you have to stay in your lane. You have to stay in your lane. You have to know your lane, and your time will come. If you really have a thing for luxury stuff, I don't have a thing. I like trainers. I like nice trainers, maybe Jordan, stuff like that. I like jewelry, so you will probably see me with like a Rolex or something like that, but I'm not like jewelry. I like gold. I like, know what you like, and as you have the money to be able to do that, do it. Does that make sense? Do it, but don't do it before it's time, because otherwise it's the devil. All right, now let's move on. Now we need to get into some real facts of the matter, right? So the first facts of the matter and like practical tips is you need to save 10 to 20%. Now you say, so 10 to 20% of what, Mike? Yeah, of what? Of everything, right? Everything you get, you need to save 10 to 20% of it. Why? The reason you need to save 10 to 20% of it is because you make so much more money then, right? You make so much more money, and it's a habit. That's all it is. It's a habit. It's one that I really wished I knew sooner. So if even at your age, even at the age of 16, and this could apply to someone that's in their 30s, and it does, but if as young as possible, you can learn and get into a habit of whenever you get money, you save some of it, then you will grow and you will have money all the time. You will get rich. You will be rich. You will be abundant. You will be financially free long before anyone in your family probably was, right? So you need to save 10 to 20%. No, these are the most simple maths that you really need to know and understand. If you get £100 for your birthday, save 10 to 20 pound of it. If you get £10 from school and you don't use it one day, save £2 of it. It sounds silly, but I heard Rick Ross say it once in an interview years ago, and he was like, you got to keep a shoebox, meaning like a savings, a stash. And it's like, it doesn't matter if there's $100 in it. It doesn't matter if there's $50. It doesn't matter but you got to keep something. And as a man, especially as a man, but as a young man, a young boy especially, it's so important to have your own, to be able to know that you can afford to go and do this and pay for something yourself and get your hair cut by yourself and get trainers, even if you don't. Even if someone still pays for you or does something for you, but to know that you can will empower you, all right? And that is the most powerful thing. You need to make sure that, and what this does is it keeps you away from the dreaded zero, all right? Zero is the place of you don't want to go. You don't want to be there. And a lot of you watching this will be there right now, right? And the problem with zero is that I spoke about something called scarcity. But what scarcity kind of surrounds itself with, right, and is in close companionship with, is a mode, and it's a mode that you really want to avoid in life, and it's called survival mode. When you're in survival mode, the way you think, the way you act, everything you do is compromised. It's not as good as it could and should be, because you're thinking of how to survive. You're thinking, when's your next meal coming from? You're thinking of how you're going to get to places, travel. You're thinking about if you want something but you can't have it. Your mind is just can't, struggle, scarcity. And that's what zero brings, and you never want to be at zero. And how you do that is if you save 10 to 20% of everything. And sometimes you're going to enjoy it. It's going to become addictive. It's going to become like a game. So you're going to save 50%. You're going to save 70%, and your stack, your pile is going to grow and grow and grow. It's super duper important. Okay, cool. This point kind of goes hand in hand with the next one. But it's more like a mental lesson. And the lesson is simply this, right? Just because money's in your hand, it doesn't mean it's yours, right? Money in your hand is not always money that's yours, all right? And this is where we start going into like taxes, okay? Right? This is when we start going into taxes. In most countries, they have taxes, right? Most, if not every country has taxes, or they have some format of taxes. And taxes is basically, it's basically FU money. That's what I call it, right? Essentially, someone saying, F you, man, give me some money, right? That's what the governments do. But no, in all seriousness, what taxes are supposed to be used for is like bettering the company, right? Sorry, the country. So the country. Okay. But companies have taxes as well, like different people, like people have tariffs, all these different things. But generally taxes are meant to be for bettering the country. If I do the financial literacy course, which is basically about like learning about money, if I do that free course, then I will talk a bit more about taxes. But typically, all it means is that whenever you work or you have a business, especially, you have to understand that whatever comes to you, let's say this is you, right? This is, your money. You've just been paid this. You've worked for a month. You did 50 hours or whatever it may be, right? You have to understand that this ain't all yours. Boom, tear that half, and half goes to the tax man. In this country, it's called HMRC. In USA, it's called IRS. Like you basically have to pay to taxes, right? So as soon as you get the money, you've got to pay some to taxes. And there's other stuff in life as well. You got to remember, you got to pay bills. As soon as you start getting older, you start moving out of your mum's house, or even it's still at your mum's house, you're going to have, or you start paying for these liabilities, you start signing up for these liabilities like cars and phone bills and stuff like that. You've got bills. So when money comes in, it's not necessarily yours. And that's why it's very important. So a lot of us fall into this trap. I fell into this trap that, let's say I worked for a month and I made £1,000. I look at it like that £1,000 mine. And when you have a paycheck, you work for a company, that's very much so, this case, because they'll take the taxes out themselves and they'll give you what you're owed, right? So you can start to think of it like that. When you run a business, it's not the case, okay? You might make all of this money, you might make £1,000 from your business, but you owe a certain amount to taxes. Now, I'm not going to, again, like I said, I'm not going to talk about how much you owe and all of that stuff. It's just important to know that when you get money, you need to think about distributing the money, all right? And that's the next point that we're going to talk about. So what do we mean by distributing the money? And again, it becomes like a bit of a game. It becomes fun, right? When you get the hang of these things. When you know the rules, a game becomes fun. If you ever played somebody like, let's say you go to somebody's house, this is a long time ago, and you jump on their console and they've got this new game and you're like, oh yeah, let me play. And they're just smoking you, right? They're just beating you. They're wiping the floor with you. But it's because you don't even know the controls. And people always do this. I remember this, like, what's and they won't even, they'll be like, yeah, just press this and press that. So they'll give you a little starter pack, but then they'll start wiping you. And once you get the hang of it, now it becomes fun. It's not fun when they're just destroying you, right? But when you know the rules, it's fun. So that's, how I see it, right? You got to see it from a positive perspective. So whenever you get money, it's best to save it into these 4 pots, right? And other people have different ways of looking at it, different ideas about it, but this is generally just a basic starter pack of what you can look at when it comes to distributing money, right? So you look at money, let's say you have 4 pots. You've got savings, you've got emergency, you've got investments, and you got spending. And I know I must have got this wrong because savings and emergency are similar kind of thing. I might be missing one. Bills, maybe? Emergency? Yeah, bills. Let's call this bills. Maybe I've got it wrong. The premise is still the same. It doesn't matter, right? When you get money, you want to distribute it. So if you get £1,000, right? Bing, bing, ding. You got £1,000 coming to your account, right? You want to be putting 250 here, 250 here, 250 here, 250 here. If you just this simple thing, yeah, you'll be sweet. You will live a much better life. You will live a much more abundant. Now, I would say life. There's so many other things as a man, as a person, as a human being, you got to do and get right. But in terms of money, you be in a better place. Okay, right? You have to distribute your money accordingly to different places. Bills, emergency, investment, spending. Let's just go over it. Bills or savings, right? Let's say you're not ready for bills yet, you don't have bills. Savings would just be like money that you have aside, just that you have. And then bills, which is probably more likely it, is obviously money that you're going to use to pay things, right? As these bills come up, you might start off that if you do this early enough, you just have a pot that is big, that whenever you do sign up for an insurance or whatever it may be, you could actually just pay them in full rather than even having a subscription, right? Or if you do want to do a subscription, it comes out of this, right? And typically what you want to do is have different accounts as well. You set up different bank accounts for different things. And what that does, it just makes it easier to be more disciplined, because you might ask okay, how do I actually keep it? Do I withdraw the money? Typically what we do is we'll have different accounts. Now, again, I'm not saying this is what you have to do. And when you're younger, I don't know how many accounts you have access to, but also I know when you're younger, you get a lot of cash rather than bank transfers as well. And a lot of banks will allow you to create spaces within your bank, so little pots within your bank as well. So bills is bills. Emergency is important. Emergency is very, especially as you get older, so important, because it's if something, let's say the wheel of your car bursts or something or you get a puncture in your tire, right? Or you have to help somebody with something, or your mum needs to borrow money off you, or this, that, and the third. I'm just thinking from a young person's perspective, right? That's emergency fund, right? Because things pop up in life. That's a fact. So if you have money to go towards your emergency fund and that builds up and builds up, it puts you in a better position when things pop up. Then investments. Investments is an important thing to understand. Investments is when opportunities pop up. Opportunities will pop up, and it's important you take these opportunities in life. This is what gets you ahead. Most of what we spoke about is about managing money and how you do all of that stuff. But to really get ahead and make more money, it's not just about saving, right? If you get a certain amount in your life, you only ever make X amount and you save it, like that don't make a difference. You still want to you want to make more. And that's why you need money for investment. So that could be slow investments like stocks and stuff like that, which maybe I can do another video about, or it could be like high risk or quick investments, like you want to open up a shop with your friend, or you want to open up an e-commerce website, or and as you get older, you're going to see so much people selling you things on social media, like courses and mentorship. It could be Andrew Tate, it could be whoever, right? You want to have a pot for that, because I do believe that I've invested in myself growing up, and it's been beneficial. I've had good experiences, I've had bad. I've learned from all of them. But if I had a pot that was directly for that, and I built that from a young person, then it would have been so much smoother. It would have made life much easier. And then spending, because like we said before, you have to live life. You're gonna want to spend money. So if you have a pot that's directly for that, then it makes everything easier, and you don't have to dip into the rest, right? So distribute your flipping money. All right, let's move on. I think we're doing good for time, hopefully. Hopefully my bird's eye view vision is still on. Next one is business is not a choice. It's not a career path. All right? It's life. Career path is life, right? People get this wrong. They think that, you're the businessy type person, or you're a business type person. I'm not a business type person. I want to just work a job. I just want to get a paycheck. BS. Okay. Everything in this world runs by businesses. Everything is a business. Every organization is a business. The school is a business. The university is a business. The NHS, the healthcare is a business. It's all business. The back end, in order for them to all run smoothly, is business. So if no one wanted to run a bit, the world wouldn't work. All right. As you can see with AI, so many jobs are at risk. So many jobs are at risk of being completely obliterated. But one job that can't be obliterated for a life to even work is the business owner, the person at the top of the thing, right? So the reason I say it's not a choice or a career and it's life is that the Americans have this a lot more in their head, right? They kind of understand this a lot more. You can go two ways, right? You can say directly you want to own a business. You want to be an entrepreneur, right? That's the way you want to do things. And you might also say that you want to work. You want to work for somebody. Maybe you want to you want to be like a nurse. You want to be a doctor. Maybe you want to be an accountant. Maybe you want to be whatever it may be, right? Cool. You have absolutely every right to choose whichever one. I'm not here to say any is better. But what I'm saying is that the art of business is basically just flipping money. It's basically being savvy with money, but it's basically growing your money. And everybody should treat their life like a business, even if they don't directly own a business, right? So what we just said about distributing your money, that's what businesses do. Businesses have to allocate money towards marketing, towards staff and employees, towards this and the third. It's like running a business. Businesses have to be organized with their sheets. They have to understand what's the income and the outcome. It's called a profit sheet. So you, the working person, even if you're a working person, you have to move the exact same way as the business, right? And you have to look for business opportunities. So for example, we talked about assets and liabilities. You might never run a business in your or never decide I'm going to go build the next Facebook, I'm going to build the next Instagram. However, you might decide that, all right, I'm not going to build the next Facebook. I'm working my job, right? I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, I'm an accountant, I'm a software engineer. So maybe I work for tech companies, right? Which, listen, you can make a lot of money. So you might be making 100,000 a year from this, right? And you might think, wow, 100,000 a year, that's amazing. That's that's 7,000 or 8,000 a month or whatever it may be. That's loads. I would never, that's easy, right? Well, guess what? What about when, you decide to have a family, have a wife, right? And now you're paying the bills and you need a bigger house because there's two of you. And maybe you have kids as well. You have a dog. right? You got a car because you need a car to get around with the kids now. And the kids, they go to school, you know, like nursery as well, for example. That's not free. They got school clothes, they got uniform. So guess what? That 7,000 that looked so amazing before, it turns out to not be that great. And you know what? It sounds crazy, but there might not be a time where your bills actually come up to around that 4,000 mark, right? You'd be surprised, right? Especially in the UK. And then guess what? Just because you're making 7,000, remember what we talked about: taxes. All right, so you're not actually collecting 7,000. And guess what they try to do in certain countries, right? You can move other places, but certain countries, they charge more, they take more taxes the more you make. So your 7,000 might actually be about 5,000. It might even be 4,500, something like that. Maybe it's a bit more, I don't know, right? But now you can see there's actually less of a difference, right? And then what did we say about emergencies? What if you're going to get married? What if you want to do certain things? Maybe, you know, you want to go on travel, you want to go on holiday every so often, right? Now this might even be more than this, and then it's all messed up, right? This is why business is not a choice or a career, it's life. So even if you are just working a job, you can stack up assets and run them like a business. You might stack up houses, right? So you might buy some investment properties where you can do what? What did we speak about before? You rent them out. You rent out rooms, and now maybe this is making you 2,000 a month, right? Maybe you set up an e-commerce stuff on the side. Maybe you rent your car on the weekends, right? Maybe you get a car, you got two cars, one for you, one for the missus, whatever, and one of them you rent it out on the weekends. They do this a lot in America. They call it Toro. You might make 300 a week, 250, 150 a week from this, something like that, right? Maybe you just have like whatever. All right, whatever it may be. But as you can see, when you do this, that supplements this, right? Now, let's say even if your bills are 4,000, you're making, let's say you're making 5,000 from work, and then you got travels and stuff like that. That kind of makes things a bit messy, but then you're making an extra 2,000 from this. Now, guess what? You're not only covering all your bills, you're also being able to save more again. You can start saving and distributing 500 there and 500 there, and you're able to breathe, okay? So business is not a choice or career, it's life. No matter what you decide to do, whether you do want to directly go into business or you don't, you need to learn how to you just need to learn the game of business. You need to understand opportunities that you can go into. You need to understand how to manage things. You need to understand marketing. You need to understand how to sell, and life will be easier. And that's where most people go wrong, because they think it's one or the other, and they get sucked into one. All right, cool. Number 8 rather, is reverse engineer the life you want. Okay? What does that mean? I didn't actually do engineering or anything like that when I was young. I don't need to write this down because it's not on. I didn't do engineering, but I learned one term, this reverse engineering. And what that basically just means is that you look at what you're trying to achieve and then you work it backwards. All right. So if I want to score a goal in football, then I can reverse that backwards and say, what are the steps that would need to be taken to score that goal? So I need to obviously learn how to, maneuver the ball and dribble with the ball, which is move with the ball. I need to know how to actually, get past defenders or, pass and do X, Y, Z. And I need to also know how to shoot and aim and score, right? And score. So once I know that, then it's easier for me to take the steps to actually achieve the goal. So that's what reverse engineering essentially is and what it means. And when I learned that phrase, it helped me a lot in life, because I was able to use it for many different things, especially goals, right? And if you heard, what I was saying in the last point, that's what I was literally doing, right? Because I started to talk about, maybe you have the wife, then you have the kids, then you have the dog, maybe you got a car, maybe you want to travel, and so on and so forth. And I was able to say, all right, based on that, how much will I need to be spending? How much will I need to be making? All right. And this is where reverse engineering comes into play. Okay. And the reason I say you want to reverse engineer the life you want, is because that's going to allow you to work backwards and understand how much you need to be making. Yeah. So it basically gives you a goal point. And if you realize if you remember a few points back, I mentioned something. I said, when we were talking about the luxury items, I said that there's nothing more important than experiences. All right. When I look at at the last 4 years or 3 years, I haven't been able to do everything or achieve everything I would have wanted, let's say, right? But I've been able to, be in a beautiful house, be engaged to a beautiful fiance, travel the world. I've been to, now one of the seven wonders in the world, which is one of like, these are like my life goals, right? So I was able to go to the pyramids, go inside the pyramids. I've been to Jamaica. I've been to probably like over 12 or 13 countries or something like that. So these experiences are like what life's made of. When I'm 60, 70, 80, God willing, I can look back on these memories and these will be the most precious things to me. So experiences mean everything. Experiences are everything. And you want to be able to reverse engineer the lifestyle you want and not just only focus on the money. And this was one of my main mistakes, I think, when I was younger, that I just had a figure in mind. I just thought, I want £1 million. I want £2 million. I just want to be a millionaire. And it was just from people flexing on YouTube or MTV or wherever I'd seen them that made me just focus on that number. But if I had reverse engineered what I truly want and actually just sat down to visualize the type of lifestyle that I would have wanted and the type of things and experiences I would have wanted to do, I would have realized that I could probably achieve these things with like 2,000 a month when at a young age, I'm talking about, right? Because as a young person, you don't need as much money. Like we said, you don't have the wife, the kids, the dog, the car, like all of these things. So you can be traveling, you can like wear nice clothes. You don't have to be luxury, but it can be nice clothes. You can go different places. You can have really amazing experiences with a lot less, right? And as you achieve that, you get that winner's energy, and then your appetite grows. You want to achieve more things, you want to do more experiences, and so on and so forth. So once you get into a place where you can see, even if it's 5 years down the line, 3 years, 2 years, and you can see what type of life you want to live, especially as an adult, right? Because you're going from kidulthood to adulthood, right? Kind of like the song. So when you can look into adulthood, and as soon as you can say, all right, this is the type of life I want to live. I want to live in another country. I want to do drive this type of car. I want to do this type of things. You can start to actually price, go online, go chat to ChatGPT and find out and say, you know what, I actually need about £6,000 a month to live the type of life that I want, right? I need about £6,000 a month. So with that, you can now say, all right, I need £6,000 a month. How do I get that? Is it a business that gets me there quicker? Or you know what, maybe I get a job. Maybe I'm working in flipping Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Aldi's, and maybe I'm making 3,000. But maybe with that, I've invested in like an e-com business or this or whatever, and that makes me an extra 2,000. All right, and then maybe I do something else and I make an extra 1,000, and that's it. And I've actually hit a big goal, and that allows me to have money to save. It allows me to have money to travel. It allows me to have money to X, Y, and Z. All right, and then you can just keep growing and improving there. So you really want to reverse engineer the lifestyle that you want. And you want to use reverse engineering with everything, really, goals and a bunch of different things. But definitely with the lifestyle you want, it will change the game for you. So the next thing we want to do is, and we're coming to the end now, I'm rounding up with some key principles that are coming up, right? So first key principle is bad versus good debt, right? You got bad debt and you got good debt. Debt can be one of the most crippling things for people, all right? Like, it's almost like a PTSD, traumatic experience for us and me to think back of like bailiffs knocking at the door as a young person, right? Bailiffs are the people who, you might probably not heard of them or know them already, but when someone's in debt, the company or whoever sends the bailiff, sells the bailiff the debt, the bailiff comes to your door, they're knocking, they're giving red letters. And back in the days, it was really rough. Like, they're trying to get through the door, or they're waiting for someone to open. As soon as they open, they're putting a foot in the door. Like, that's one of the things in this country is a bit, and I'm sure it's a lot of countries that have that kind of thing, right? So, the word debt in itself can be very like daunting. There's definitely bad debt, all right? There's definitely bad debt. Bad debt is usually the type that they give to you when you're in like dire need, right? Or, when you don't have much chips to play with, you don't really have much cards in your hand, right? And that's when, certain credit companies and certain people will give you debt. They'll say, yes, I'll take this credit card or take this loan or take this whatever. at a very high interest. Okay, and how that works, I'd love for the bird's eye view to still be showing, but let's say that you're borrowing something. Let's say you want to get a car, right, on finance. Okay, so you want to get this car, and I can't even see now, so don't expect a great drawing. So you want to get this car, and the car costs you £10,000, right? Bad debt is that you get this car, £10,000 for whatever reason, and they charge you interest of, I don't know, 5%, whatever it may be. But after you've, on top of the car, let's say in total, you're paying back, let's say, and they can be crazy, 5% probably low for a car. You could be paying back 20,000, right? You could be paying back £20,000 for this car. So you're paying almost double. You have this car for 3 years. By the time you're done with this car might be worth, I don't know, it might be worth 7,000, it might be 8,000, depending on how you treat it, right? You might still be paying this off in 3 years, but the car's only worth that, and at the time you bought it, it was only supposed to be that, okay? Like that's the sort of things that goes on in depth, and I really wish that someone broke down and explained to me that that's how companies work, right? And that's how a lot of them work. That's how a lot of them make their money, and how a lot of people in Britain especially get rich, right? By charging crazy amounts of interest on bad loans. And because you really want this car, or because you haven't got any other option, you can't pay, you don't have the money to pay for the car directly, right? You can't, your credit isn't great, so you don't have the opportunity to get a better rate, right? Because there'll be another company and they'll only charge you like 12,000. So like they might charge you 2,000 on top. Damn, there might even be a company that they don't even charge you anything extra. Like they just, you just pay me back the money over time, right? Or it feels like that. Maybe they're only charging like 500 on top. Okay, so the better you position you're in is the better deal you tend to get in terms of debt, and that boils down to credit. Now with credit, that should really be its own section and its own video, and I very much so will do it. But credit essentially is just a score that you get given that basically tells companies, businesses, whoever might ever want to borrow you money, maybe it's banks for mortgages to get a house, it tells them how good you are at paying things back, okay? And the best way to do that is to get a very simple, maybe a credit card or a phone bill, and just pay that back regularly all the time. Just all the time. When you start getting credit cards or overdrafts and they start throwing these numbers at you, take £1,000, take 1,500, take all of this, it becomes very tempting to just spend all of that money. And then maybe you're taking long to pay it back, and it's just a bad loop. And all the things I spoke about earlier in this video should help you to avoid that. All right, but your credit score is something that is helpful. But you don't want to overuse it, and you don't want to get into a place where you're just having to pay back loads and loads of money. You don't want your debt to creep up. You really don't. It's one of the worst things in the world, okay? I've been there, and I tell you that for free. You don't want your debt to creep up, okay? There is good debt, and good debt is like what I just said. If you get a phone bill for £20 a month, you're making a lot more than £20 a month. You pay that off, it improves your credit score. That's good debt, okay? You get a house, but maybe you get it for an investment purpose, or maybe, it's half investment, half liability, but it's appreciating, it opens doors to other things. That's good debt. So there's times where being in debt or owing someone something is not a bad idea. For example, I know people who have millions in the bank, literally millions in the bank, right? And they deal with properties, right? So let's say this person might have 5 million worth of assets and money, a combination of different things, right? Between their house and actual physical cash or whatever. And they might want to do a property development. They want to build a set of houses or a set of flats, right? And the property development costs, let's say it costs 2.5 mil, right? 2.5 M. You would expect this person to just use their money, right? Right? It's a simple thing. Oh shit, you got 2.5 mil. Maybe when they're done, the worth of this deal is going to actually be worth like 6 mil when it's done. So it's a big flip. It's going to make a whole 3.5 mil. You'd expect this person to just use their money, right? Wrong. That's not what they do. They go to the bank. They might put down 10-20% of this, which would be like 250 to 500,000. Okay. and they get the money borrowed to them. So they get to go and make that 3 mil profit, right, from this property development without ever really digging deep into their own money. And that's smart. All right. It's smart because they can put their money in other things. They can just keep it safe. If anything goes wrong, like in the economy or whatever, the bank have to know that, listen, it wasn't me, mate. You know, the economy is this happened or whatever, right? There's more space. There's more breathing space. They can even pay this over longer time periods, so they don't even feel the hit. So there is good debt and there is bad debt, right? There's a difference. Cool. Let's get into the last point, the most important point. I've given this a funny name. And I do this in memory of a guy, an American rapper called Young Scooter. Now, I say things like this to let you know, listen, I'm not a saint. I'm not no different to you, right? I used to listen to gangster rap and trap music and whatever it may be. And when I was growing up, I used to listen to Young Scooter a lot. And it wasn't really necessarily about the drug dealing side of things. Maybe it was, but it was more about just go out, make money, like hustle mentality, right? Not like, you know, just really just that hustle music. I mean, he had a term called jugging. He recently died, so rest in peace to him. But he had a term called jugging, and he had a song that said, jug, you know, funny, but it's good. And it just meant like go out, make money, hustle. I don't know if hustle is the best term, but like make money, do things to like get money, right? Not necessarily bad. And I call this last section creative jugging, okay? All that means to me is that we're in a world where you have AI, you have social media, you have so many different things, you have so many different angles. What the biggest lesson I can give you, people always ask the question of what is the most important or the best industry to get into or the best business model to get into in 2025, whatever it may be. Here's my last point and my ending point. We're living in a world where probably some of the biggest jobs and opportunities don't even exist yet. There are jobs now that did not even exist, that are making hundreds of £1,000s a year, maybe not millions. There are businesses, there are things being created now that are generating billions of pounds that never even existed a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So the people who will be the most successful going forward are the people who use this to make money, who use this to build success. So be creative. Do not let your school or community or parents or whoever bring down your creativity, your ideas, if you're a visionary, you're someone that gets loads of ideas, do not let them crush that. Do not let them tell you to be realistic or that doesn't make sense or stuff like that. Use your mind, you expand your mind and watch cartoons, do things that make your mind just explore and be creative, because in this new world it is literally the creative businesses that are making millions and millions of pounds. Same with jobs. Don't get bogged down thinking that, all right, I just have to pick from traditional jobs. I just want to be a plumber. They might be you could be an AI plumber, right? Like you could be a robotics plumber. You might have go to jobs and have a robot that just does the job, but you man the robot. That literally could and probably will be a thing. I saw a business in Dubai where they use drones to wash the buildings. And if you've ever been to Dubai, you know it is sky-rise city, it's skyscraper city, nothing but tall buildings. And one of the funny things or general things you see when you go to Dubai is people climbing those buildings on the ropes and everything like that and washing the buildings. And I literally saw it like not long ago, an advert of these guys who they've started this business where they've got the drones that will just go up there and wash, and they've solved a major problem. They're probably gonna lose a lot of jobs, are probably gonna be lost from that, right? To be honest with you, but they solve a major problem because it's a dangerous job, and they're gonna be minted from that, right? So be creative, use your mind, expand your mind, and it works at a big scale, but it also works at a small scale. Think of little creative things you can do now to make money for yourself, to make success for yourself. It could be something simple. It could be something like going and doing a car wash business. I'll give you an example. You could say, I've got friends, they're not doing nothing, we're just hanging about, summer holidays coming up, we're not doing shit. I'm gonna get 5 friends and I'm gonna manage a car wash business. And I'm gonna say, listen, you don't do the washing, I'm gonna get us the business. Yeah? and you go and you just go do ads, you go on Instagram, you do, you know, you don't even knock, because you don't need to knock nowadays. You could still do it, but you don't really need to knock. And you can say that we're going to do car wash for the lavish areas, like great areas, and we're going to say, look, we're going to create a page, we're going to create a business, you're going to have our names in there, so you're going to know that we're trustworthy, and we're going to just do the nice areas, and we're going to learn how to clean amazing cars, like proper cars, like Rolls Royces. I don't say proper, but good, like high-end cars like Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis, whatever. And you and your friends can make thousands and thousands of pounds this summer just from that. So think creatively, let your mind expand. So without that being said, I've been talking for over an hour. I got a headache, but it was worth every minute of it. If you enjoyed this, please comment, please show your love, because then I will make more and I will get that course over to you even sooner. I am creating an organization, or I have created an organization called UNQ, and it stands for You Never Quit. A lot, I could speak about that for days, but just keep an eye out for it. It's for young people, young men specifically, and it's gonna change the game completely. All right. With all that said, peace and love and peace. Make sure you subscribe.